Welcome to another episode of the Logic Cast. My name is Blanca Kong, joined by Gunnar Eos, How to Wolf, and Esoteric Skills. This week, we're going to do another hot take spin the wheel episode. Uh, so we have 10 topics, and let's spin the wheel. Let's see what we got. Games are more inclusive now, and that's a good thing. Didn't we
I
do
think,
this topic last week?
yeah, let's X that one out. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
take
righty.
that one out.
Let's spin the wheel again.
The wheel's rigged.
I'll start. Emulation is preservation, not piracy. I guess I'll start. I think it's both.
Mhm.
Simple as that. It's both. Emulation isn't something that the industry wants to exist, or it's not even wants to exist, but doesn't want it to be a free market, option. I think if companies had it their way, they would rather have their classic games be available through whatever service they provide. But we have a lot of smart people in the gaming community who can figure out how to emulate these old games on modern PCs, or even burn them on CDs and have them play on modded consoles, things like this. Um, and so companies are just in an ongoing battle trying to like patch out, well, at least modern consoles, patch out these options in order to prevent people from, playing on modded consoles. Like there's a way to mod a Switch where you can play a bunch of games on it. There's a way to mod PS3, PS4, um, in order to emulate old games that typically don't play on these consoles. And I'm sure that developers hate that, because that's money that they're not getting otherwise, right? That's a service you're not paying for. If you're playing old games, that means you're not paying and buying the new games. Um, so yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. But emulation is good because it does preserve um, older games or games that are really hard to find or unavailable to you, and so it gives people the option to actually enjoy the content without spending hundreds or even thousands of dollars on an old disc. So yeah, I think it's both. That's my answer.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'll kind of just echo it real quick. Yeah, it can be both. I think emulation overall is a net positive for the gaming sphere. We've seen with certain shutdowns of online stores like the at the time the PlayStation 3 and Vita and the 3DS store, which no longer exists, and there were some 3DS store exclusive games that were never on a cartridge, never made it to Switch, were only on the 3DS, most of the time because they utilized either the touchscreen, the two screens, or both, so they were kind of tailor made for the 3DS. But the point still stands that these are games that more than likely will never exist again because they were only meant to exist on the 3DS because of the capabilities of the 3DS. And even some games, like, for some stupid reason, the actual final real ending of Fire Emblem um,
Fates.
Conquest and Birthright, Fates, yeah. You can only get that if you bought the collector's edition or if you bought it on the 3DS store. So, because of emulation, everybody can play it and get the actual true ending to a 3DS game. If not, we wouldn't have had that because they don't exist on the cartridge unless, like I said, you got the collector's edition, which collector's edition, so wasn't a lot. Um, but obviously piracy still goes on. There are people who Kong mentioned that the Switch is kind of not a big one, but a Switch is one that I hear a lot about because people are like, these games don't run well on the actual Switch hardware. They run better on PC emulation. So you'll have people who do ethical um, emulation slash piracy. Well, no, it's not piracy. It's emulation,
Hmm.
where they'll buy a game and they'll run it through their homebrew Switch to get the actual files that make up the game and run it on PC. you'll also have people that don't do any of that. They're playing Legend of Zelda, Metroid, all the good stuff on their PC, don't own a Switch, never bought the game, they straight pirated. We all know that I believe Tears of the Kingdom leaked. It leaked a week early or a couple weeks early than its release date, and people were playing the full game. They pirated the full game. So it does have its ugly side, like everything, but overall, I think it it's the only way we can preserve some games that don't exist anymore, or will more than likely never see the light of day again for XYZ reasons. So yeah, I agree. It's a little bit of both, but I overall support it because I do think it's better for the act of preservation than just straight stealing content and playing it. But it will be used for that, and there's no real stopping that. People want a free thing, they're gonna get their thing for free.
Yeah, yeah. I pretty much agree with you guys on the strength of it being a mixed bag. I think it's based upon the intent in which that the emulation is being utilized. Like you made a wonderful example, Gunnar, where people would want to emulate something for early access before its release date, and that, in my opinion, is considered piracy. Whereas you have others who have no way of accessing the game. Nintendo is not putting it out. Sony is not putting it out on the Sony store or whatnot. Microsoft has no intentions of putting some of their games out on their digital distribution. So you have no way of playing said game. So you decide to emulate it because that's the only way that you have access to it. And I think that's a way of preservation. Not to mention, in the age that we lived, once you bought a game, it was pretty much yours. Now, with these companies, they have intention of relinquishing people from emulating for the sheer, act of having games be paid via subscriptions. You had that Super Castlevania 4 on the Super Nintendo. If you don't have it anymore, you can play it on the Switch. However, you're gonna have to pay in the Nintendo's case, it's an annual subscription, if I'm not mistaken. But you still have to pay repeatedly in order to maintain access to those library of games. So again, like it's based upon the intent behind it. If you're doing it maliciously because you want to save your money, you don't want to support the companies that are making the game, then yes, it would be considered piracy. However, if you are someone that just have absolutely no access to it, like many of us do not have access to, like, games that are costing like hundreds of dollars. What the hell was that?
Hmm?
Wolf, you okay over there?
Why? What happened?
Never mind.
Hmm.
But I am gonna just end with this. Like, basically, if you have no way of accessing said game, then I think emulation is fair. However, if you're trying to, like, circumvent the system and try to go around it in some way, shape, or form, when you do have access to the game and you don't have to spend an exorbitant amount of, like, money for said game, then, or you're trying to access the game before its initial release date, then yeah, I would say that's piracy. So it's a mixed bag.
I think you guys hit all the points that I would say. I don't really have much of a deep thought opinion on it. So I would just say that I can agree. I can agree that it all depends on the situation of whether it's piracy or not. That's my take on it. This particular topic, anyway.
All right,
Hmm.
let's spin that bitch.
Okay. I took off the other two topics, so
Hmm.
Yep,
let's
my
see what we
bad
get.
for the fake first one.
casual gamers keep the industry alive? I think that's a yes, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on where you land. Um, Casual gamers, we are. I don't know if I'm a. I don't think I'm definitely not a casual gamer. Definitely a hardcore gamer. I don't know if you guys identify as hardcore casual these days. I know we all were casual for or were hardcore for sure. If we're looking back 10, 15 years ago when we were like in our early 20s or late teens. But I think even into my 30s, like I've still maintained a high investment into video games with either my money or time. And so but I don't play as hard as I used to. So I don't know. But when
Hardcore
I
casual. I like that. I like that one. Yeah.
a hardcore casual, I guess.
Yeah, I
I don't
like
know.
that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like it.
that's a good term.
But anyway, I think this refers more to people who might own one console and maybe buys 1 to 2 games a year. I'm gonna say that's a casual player. So that's how I'm gonna look at it at this question or this statement.
Okay.
And I would say yes. I think the casual gamers do keep the industry alive. Empirical data that I could point to that would support that would be if you look at sales for games like NBA 2K, like those games sell incredibly well, or games like FIFA Soccer, or games like Call of Duty. Those games all that, don't do anything that much different to their previous, entries a year before, whatever game we're looking at. But these games sell extremely well, and they blow games like games that take the industry 4 to 6 years to make. It blows some of these games out of the water in terms of units moved. So um, when you look at those numbers, it's clear that the casual audience, I think, has a big stake in the industry from just a raw numbers perspective. And um, yeah, I would say they keep it alive in the sense at the level that it's at right now. It definitely keeps it alive. Is that a good thing? If you're an executive for a major company, absolutely. If you're a guy like me or a guy like any of us, where we look for more, I'm gonna say, deeper, more complicated experience, then maybe not, because the experiences and games that we play and invest into are not NBA 2K or games like that. Even though we might dabble in some of them, but these aren't the games that we typically go for. These aren't. At no point did I ever hear anybody here ever say, "Yo, I cannot wait for this new Madden to come out." Like that's never ever come out of any of our mouths ever, and probably never will. Especially with how it is now.
well,
So
well, I mean, I used to play way back in the days. I used to play
yeah,
Madden
yeah, and I
competitively,
used to
but
play old Madden too. We're
yeah,
talking like Madden, 98, Madden 99. Yeah, I used to play
yeah.
those on PlayStation or Blitz or games like that.
Hmm.
But like, even if that's true, I've never really met anybody that had the same level of excitement for a Madden entry that somebody had for like a new Final Fantasy or new Resident Evil. Like the fandom is way more animated, lively when it comes to like games like that, or Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Final Fantasy, fighting games like Street Fighter, Tekken, Diablo. These are game franchises that are celebrated as like when they come out, it's a big deal. Whereas a Madden is just kind of like an annual. It's like it's just a birthday party you have to go to every year. That's what that game is. And so and there's nothing wrong with it. People like it, people buy it. So, you know, industries are gonna give the market decides what is successful, and so those who are participating in the market as a salesperson is going to provide whatever the market wants. And if that market wants, subpar football games every year, then that's what the market will get. And so yeah. But yeah, those people do make a majority and do invest the most money. So they do. I would agree with the statement in a nutshell. Anyway.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with the statement as well. But I kind of took the term casual gamer from a different approach. I took it as people who dabble in many different titles, but they don't play them as intently or as extensively as we do. You know, like, and the reason why I say that is because like there's a lot of people who are trying to like get into like say the Seki Soulsborne sphere, that ecosystem, and they're casual. But they are influential enough to say like, hey, this isn't working. Make the game easy mode or whatnot. Not so much within From Software or whatnot, but there's enough people within the casual gamer ecosystem where they complain a lot and they cause games to change based off of like their influence or adjust. Um, so I wasn't like looking at it from the approach that you did, Kong, where he's like they just dabble in particular games, which makes a lot of sense as well. I kind of like was fixated on people who just essentially, oh, I'm gonna try this game out. I'm gonna try this game out. Like basically just checking the new flavor of the month, so to speak. Um, but yeah, I absolutely agree with you. They keep the industry alive. There are many more of them than there are us. You know, I think hardcore gamers have always been few and far between, except for like maybe during the dawn of gaming, like the early like '90s, going into the early 2000s or whatever, where that was more like a niche hobby, and then it started to kind of disperse, and people started coming into the hobby much later on. Um, and now it's to a point where like the casuals have eclipsed us, and they definitely run the market. Um, so yeah, I absolutely agree with the take.
So okay, I'll go next.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how the casual market definitely keeps the gaming industry alive. It kind of depends on, because you guys gave two different definitions of
Hmm.
the quote unquote casual gamer. One is more so like the overarching, or I guess the mass that is the quote unquote gamer sphere, and one is like the casual in the more literal sense. The guy who's playing Marvel Rivals one day, then he's playing, Streets of Rage, and he's playing Mark of the Wolves, then he's playing the new Call of Duty drop, then he's playing Repo. So like, that the two different
Yeah.
types of casuals. And the one Kong was talking about, yes, definitely keep the industry alive because these are the guys who are keeping kind of established franchises like Duty and the sports games, FIFA, keeping them operational because they'll buy the new year iteration of the game, they'll buy the currency for the game, and they're casual in both literal and metaphorical sense. Then you have the casual gamers who they kind of get into a scene and make that particular game blow up. What game example? Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter World was arguably when Monster Hunter went from a niche game to a more well-known game, and because of that, Monster Hunter World specifically, because of that, a lot of the casual audience came into Monster Hunter, which in terms of financial revenue did very well for Capcom and very well for the franchise, and propelled the franchise from kind of a niche thing to one of their key pillars, right there with Resident Evil and Street Fighter. But we've seen how the game has evolved because of the casual audience, and you'll either love it, hate it, or you're kind of sad about it. So I think the casual gamer in both aspects, they do keep the gaming industry alive. They also kind of can potentially kill gaming franchises or make them shadows of what they used to be. Think Dragon Age. Think of more than likely the new Mass Effect, Mass Effect Andromeda. Those were niche games that were kind of catered to the hardcore audience, but because they wanted a more casual audience to come in, the games have been diluted and ruined to some people's perspective. So I just wanted to touch on both iterations of the word casual. Both are correct and both could be applied to this particular hot take. So I just wanted to give my examples of both.
So my thoughts align more with Gunner thoughts, and I do agree that casual gamers do keep the industry alive. But I also feel like it's also I feel like it's a double-edged sword.
Hmm.
Because again, I'm going to use Monster Hunter as my example. When I got introduced to Monster Hunter, it was a very niche game for the market, and I felt like the games were more. There was more thought put behind the game. In turn, what I mean by thought put behind the game, it was a lot of the things that happen in Monster Hunter that we would complain about that isn't happening in the new Monster Hunter were obviously intentional for the game to have a certain level of I guess difficulty, is if that's what they're gonna call it. Um, and then when the game franchise blew up with World and World making it, you know, opening doors for casual players to come in. I'm talking when I mean by casual Monster Hunter players, I'm talking about those who will play the story, beat the big baddie, and then put it down. Um, or those who would get online here and there, but not really. They're probably just playing because they did the story and just putting in a little bit more time. But like for me, I consider us hardcore monster hunters because we do all the quests. We do as much of the armors as we like. We learn our weapons. We learn our system. We learn whatever. We
Hmm.
we embrace the game as a whole. Um, and now that this franchise has been opened up to casual players, I feel like it's not the same anymore. I feel like it's really not the same anymore, and the game is just not interesting anymore. Um, and I think that's where the casual players, even though they are going to keep the franchise going because they invested their money, and there are more casuals than they are hardcore. That I'm sure Capcom will down the line make all the money they need to invest into the next Monster Hunter game, of
Yeah,
course.
for sure.
Yeah, but for as a gamer, it's more of it hurts me in the sense of where a very niche franchise that I really love is no longer the same because it has to cater to those casuals who are spending their money onto it. And then there are other video games that I guess is not like, for instance, Metroid. Metroid was one of the lower popular end Nintendo games. And I think with Metroid Dread, the popularity increased. Samus is getting a little more attention, which now we have Metroid Prime 4 coming, which will further push her popularity, which would get more people to play, which would means there's a good chance Nintendo will see that and want to publish more Metroid games. So hopefully that's a thing again, but just not change the essence or what Metroid is.
Yeah.
When they do that, or should they do that? So yeah, definitely casuals definitely keep the industry alive, but it comes with it's also a double-edged sword. It can hurt as well with that statement being out there.
Yep. The more a game you love does, or the more popular it is, the more likely you'll see new and different iterations of it. But will it stay the same? Eh.
Doubt it.
Yeah, I think it's dependent upon the essence of the game, because if you're interested in games like Mario, those games will pretty much never change. At its core, Mario will always be Mario, because it's fun enough for both. At least in my opinion, it's fun enough for both hardcore and casuals to all come together and play without worrying about having any changes and whatnot done to it. Whereas, let's say someone uh, who's excited about Ghouls and Ghosts or Ghosts and Goblins, that game is freaking hard. If any casuals were interested in the game, it'll kind of have like that Trojan horse effect where they'll kind of like come in and then wreak havoc and potentially change the overall essence of that game if Capcom finds it lucrative enough. Like, oh, all these casuals are enjoying this game now, they want changes, let's make it happen.
Yeah, like a whole genre, fighting games.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect example.
Hmm.
Yeah, Street Fighter became a more well-known name than it used to be, even back when Street Fighter 4 was kind of the rebirth of the Street Fighter
Of what
series.
the series was, yeah.
But look at what Street Fighter 6 becomes. The casuals came in. Street Fighter 6 is one of their better selling games, especially compared to 5, which, from my understanding, had a rough start, got better towards the end, but was rough in the beginning.
Hmm.
6 started off really good, but we had these new modern controls, and the casual loves it, the non-casual hates it. Is it good for the genre, the specific game as a whole? I don't know, because that's not my area of expertise. But
Hmm.
Final Fantasy VII, it wasn't a turn-based game anymore, because more casuals wanted to play a game like 7, and turn-based turned them off. Is the game better for it? I don't think so. Other people might. So
Yeah, and I think you have it. You're in a worse position, Gunner, or anybody who's enthusiastic about Final Fantasy, or unenthusiastic about the changes made. Because at least with Street Fighter, uh, I still have. There's still the option to utilize the controls that I'm accustomed to, so I can play against someone like say Wolf, and we could have good bouts. Whereas in your case, you're stuck with the modern Final
yeah,
Fantasy
that's
way.
the way the game is made. There is no way to. The only way for me to get my original game is to boot up my Switch copy of the 1999 version of the game. So those are my
Exactly.
options.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, there's definitely a pendulum swing when it comes to that. I think you guys use Monster Hunter a lot, and I think that's a good example. Because when Monster Hunter started, right, it was a very hard game to play, a very hard game to get into. And some would argue that it wasn't worth playing. Like I'm talking PS2 era Monster Hunter. And then that pendulum started to swing a little bit. And I think the peak of Monster Hunter, I think in the middle would be like, Ultimate 3, 4 Ultimate Generations is like the sweet spot. And then like curving
Yeah.
upward was World, where it was still very good. And now we're at the end of that arc where it's now like totally opposite of what we kind of loved, which is that sweet spot era of Monster Hunter, where it's become just kind of like a very more shallow experience. I'm gonna say it's
Yeah.
more about the
Yep.
graphics, it's more
Yep.
about the immersion of the world, which is important, but like it lost a bit of its core along the way
Yeah.
in terms
Hmm.
of interesting gameplay loop and it just being fun and challenging. So I hear you, but Monster Hunter Wilds is the best selling Monster Hunter game. I think it beat World and Rise, and so
Wow.
I could be wrong about that, but like because I haven't looked at the sales data. I haven't even booted up my PS5 in like since that first 3 weeks of playing Monster Hunter. Haven't had a reason to. Um, so but the game sold extremely well, and so Capcom is going to see that. Executives are going to see that. Shareholders and investors are going to see that and go, okay, keep doing that. Don't I
Hmm.
don't care about what the internet's saying. I want to do
Yeah.
whatever is going to continue to make this number grow.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're at. So
Yeah.
yep. Let's see our next topic. We have time for at least one more, right?
Yeah, we have 30 minutes left, so we're good. We're
Oh,
good on
okay,
time.
cool.
Yeah.
So we could do at least two, I think. Hmm. Unlocking difficulty modes after beating a game is outdated. Um,
Oof, that's dependent.
I so I don't so okay, I'll go first. I don't think
Mm.
so. I think it depends. eh, Like Wolf said, it's dependent. And I think where it depends is it depends on how that particular game handles difficulty.
Yeah.
So if the difficulty is just let's scale up the HP and the hit values of the attacks and decrease the player's hit values, then yeah, that's outdated. That's like having a high score in a modern game. It's like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
But if there's difficulty where it's like, like how games handle New Game Plus, where it's like there's new content or
Hmm.
there's like new types of challenges for the player to explore, to where at this point the experience that you had with the initial game is needed in order to explore the game in this level of difficulty. I think that is perfect.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on the context, but I'm gonna go with it's good if it's New Game Plus, um, but bad if it's just like, oh, we're gonna just scale up the numbers. That's outdated. So
Mhm.
this statement requires a little bit of like a nuanced kind of exploration of the topic, because it's not a black and white statement. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah.
For me, it's more like, again, I'm gonna just go back to since I've been playing it recently, or I'm talking about it more often now, is the Devil May Cry series. So I'm gonna exclude 4, which I'm
What are
playing
you, like a
now.
super fan now or something?
No, I just feel like it there's a lot of things that I can talk about that game because it's unique on many levels. Um, I feel like, for instance, in Devil May Cry 1, Dante Must Die mode or hard mode is that outdated mode that Kong referred to, where the enemies are just like have a ridiculous amount of HP and then they hit you in one hit and you die.
Yep.
Um, that to me isn't, I mean, it's a form of difficulty, yes, but it's not anything other than just you playing the same game again, except this time you're running around with basically 1 HP. Um, so for me, Dante Must Die in Devil May Cry 1 is that explanation where it's just outdated, obviously because it's a PS2 game. But when you go to Devil May Cry 3, the collector's edition, for example, the when you beat the game with Dante, you get the ability to play the game as Virgil on any difficulty that you want to start the game on. And I think that's a better form of unlocking the difficulty mode or new difficulty mode, because not only do you get the new difficulty modes, but you also get a new character to play as altogether. So you don't, if you played on easy with Dante in the first playthrough, once you beat the game, you unlock Virgil, and now you get to play as Virgil on, the hardest difficulty. Now you get to see, well, he plays at a different. Not only do you get to see the game at a different point of view, because he plays the game at a different point of view, but also you get someone who's not Dante, who so he plays differently, and the enemies are harder. So I think that's a more enjoyable replay aspect to difficulty, other than the first game, how the first game did it. So that's what I'm saying is like, if you're unlocking harder difficulty or difficulty modes, it has to bring more to the table than just being harder. Because to be honest, do I really want to sit through a game again 20 something hours or 10 to 20 hours on average, doing the same thing again, except harder enemies? And then if the game poses certain things that are just frustrating as is, you're putting yourself through even you're putting yourself through another layer of frustration when you get to that point, or when you have to deal with certain things within the video game. So for me, it's not just it can't just be bare bone, oh, the enemy is going to hit you for 50% health and you have to, work your way to take them down. You need more than that for me, for this particular thing for it to not be outdated, I should say.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. I that definitely makes a lot of sense. I absolutely disagree with the take. I think that it's not outdated. I think the way in which that it's being implemented in current games is outdated. And what I mean is simply, back in the days, there were quite a few games that did this where they gave you more of an incentive to play on, to unlock a difficulty mode. There would be a game where you would beat the normal mode, and it's like, oh, for the true ending, play this mode. Or Ninja Gaiden is known for this, where you'll start off at either, I think it's normal, or like Master Ninja, something like that. And then once you beat the game in its entirety, you played. They gave you an extra difficulty, and what that consisted of was, although the stages were the same, you encountered new enemies, you encountered new weapons, you encountered new bosses. Like it was just enough elements within the game that allowed you to have a new experience with it. Um, it wasn't like uh these games nowadays where it's just like, okay, well, it's just more difficult and the only thing that you get is a trophy. That's the only incentive you get. Back then it was, oh, you you played this game on this mode, try this mode and you'll be rewarded more. You'll get a reward for it towards the end. um there was even like, as far as I recollect, there was even unlockables in terms of like items. If you beat the game on normal, it's like, oh, start with this item and progress through it on hard mode or whatever. Um, or like, to give players who were a little reluctant to play on normal, and they were on easy mode, what they would do is they'll have you start the game, play up to a certain point, and then it's like, oh, you got this far. If you want to continue on with the journey, play on normal mode. And they would have to start all over from the beginning. Once they pass that stage, then they'll progress further into like the other stages. So there's so many ways that it can incorporate an incentive for unlocking difficulty modes. They just haven't done it as of late. So yeah, I disagree with the take. I just think that companies need to provide a better incentive to want to play on harder difficulty modes or want to unlock difficulty modes.
Okay, so I'll go. So first off, I always thought that concept. I know it was primarily used a lot in older games, where it's just like, oh, you beat this, but if you want to see the real ending, beat it on hard mode or normal mode. I never liked that. It's just like, I think if you pay for the game, you should be able to see the entire, whether you play it on normal, easy, or ball busting difficulty. I know that's kind of a symptom of older games because some older games were like 4 stages, so they had to kind of artificially inflate the length of a video game by doing that. But I am glad that isn't a thing anymore because it's just like that. It's kind of shitty, in my opinion. Um, in relation to the actual question, I don't know because I've never played. I don't play a lot of games where this is an option. So shocker for anyone that doesn't know, I primarily play a lot of JRPGs and some Western RPGs, and for the most part, either the difficulty is set in stone, where it starts off at a manageable level, or ramps up, or it stays a consistent difficulty throughout, and you get to choose what kind of difficulty modifiers you want. A lot of them is what Kong was talking about, where it's just boss has more HP, boss does 50% more damage, you take 50% more damage. I never liked those difficulty modes because the gameplay doesn't change, the strategy, the thinking doesn't change. It just means if you fuck up even once, you're gonna suffer for it. Some people would call that difficulty and they would play on that mode. That's good for them, but again, I can always think it could be done better. And sometimes a lot of the difficulty modes that I see in the games that I play go the opposite way, where it's you unlock an easier difficulty, or in our modern gaming age, you download a free update to have a easier difficulty. So games like Persona and the Shimigami Tensei games, those are notoriously hard, with hard difficulty being kind of ball busting. But I've seen like Persona 3 and SMT5, those games have, you can download a safety difficulty, which is like easier than easy. It's just like that, but that goes back to the point we just made about casual gamers. That's how they get more casual into the game without diluting the overall game experience. So, I mean, I just think this concept of unlocking difficulty modes is just a kind of a holdover from yesteryear in gaming, where games were always smaller experiences, and in order to prolong the life of a game, they had these difficulty modes. that you unlock. Like you beat normal, you unlock Dante Must Die, and now that's a whole nother playthrough you can do that extends the life of our game.
Hmm.
So, I just think this doesn't really happen anymore. Or nowadays, it's the exact opposite, where it's okay. Well, you unlock the super easy mode because we see you having a hard time with it. So that's my answer to this question.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else have any other thoughts to add?
Mm-mm.
Nah.
Okay. So I think we have time for one more. Spin the win.
Last spin.
Spin the
Here we
win.
go. Oh, well, this will be an easy one.
All right, 1080p is fine for 90% of players. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Next topic.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. But we're not even, like, what's there to talk about on that one?
Gesture controls never worked well.
What the hell is a
So-
gesture control?
Gesture controls, I'm assuming it's just like motion controls or gyro controls, right?
Yeah, and I guess you can also include the Wiimote, the Nintendo Wii, whatever.
Yeah, like motion controls
Yeah.
with the Wiimotes or the PlayStation Move controller,
Joy-Cons.
gyro motion controls with like the Joy-Cons or the PlayStation 6 axis or whatever, or
Oh,
like
that
Kinect,
shit is annoying as
Xbox
hell.
Connect or things like that.
Yeah.
I agree they never worked particularly well. They were definitely different and new at the time. We're talking about almost 20 years ago now. So, that was 20 years ago. Now we're very used to the concept of motion controls. Even
Hmm.
the TV that I have in my living room is basically a Wiimote. It has the same functionality as a
Oh.
Wiimote.
Oh, fancy.
I got it on sale. Trust me, I didn't pay full price for that. But I actually don't like it. And I don't use it. I'd rather I use the D-pad like button that it has because that feels natural to me. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
up, down, left, right. But yeah, I think gesture controls were revolutionary, and I think there's a place for it. There's some games that do it, they utilize it very well. And most games don't. But yeah, I would agree with the take that they never worked particularly well. So very, very mild opinion.
Yeah, that's very. I think we all remember that time back when E3 used to exist. So this is oldie. When they were showing off the at the time upcoming game, um, not Tears of the Kingdom. Oh my God, Skyward Sword, and literally my man had a rough time controlling Link live on air, and when you got it at home, that game was hard to play, and it did sour my opinion of that game. It was still a good Zelda game, but the whole motion controls and that's how you had to play, no ifs, ands, or buts, like it was rough, and it definitely lowered the overall score of that game, in my opinion. When it got re-released on the Switch a couple years ago, you could tell the game was meant for the motion controls because they removed the motion controls and you could play with a controller, but it was still more playable. So, you know, while on its face it's a good idea, it's roughed in concept, at least back then. Now, if we want to count VR as part of motion controls, which I think it's safe to say VR is in that vein, I think that's where it's getting a little bit better. I think about what's the game? Half-Life Alyx. That's for modern VR systems. I don't play it. I don't own a VR. It's way too expensive for me. Very little gain. But I've seen gameplay of it. I've seen people play it. Like if you have the proper setup for it, it can work well. And I think as gaming becomes, as more money is poured into it, I think VR will eventually kind of rise from the dead again and maybe stick at some point. And that's when the motion controls will finally kind of come to their fruition. There will always be limits because you can't play a game like Tomb Raider in VR unless you want to drop kick your sibling or pistol whip your mom by accident. So that's never gonna be a thing unless we get the fucking VR headsets that treat us like Sword Art Online, and we teleport to a game world. If we get to that point, sure. But as far as VR goes, I think that's like the epitome of modern day motion controls, and they do work, for lack of a better word. They do. So, but the further in time we go, yeah, they're very rough and not the best.
Yeah, I was gonna say that me personally, I disagree with the take. I can't say that they've never worked well because I've had experiences with games that are motion control based and they were pretty fun. Now, whether or not developers take advantage of the motion controls to that degree where it's how it's intended to work, I can't really like speak to that. But based on my experiences, they have worked well. I think what it is for us is that we're in this generation kind of where we would prefer, if I had to equate it to something, we would prefer physical copies of books as opposed to reading a book off an iPad. I think that kind of falls in the same vein of like with games, we'd rather just have a regular experience utilizing a controller to maneuver our characters as opposed to having to move our body to do the same thing. So I think that's what it kind of falls down into. But the little games that I have played, Resident Evil 4, uh, Resident Evil, what was it, 7 with the VR. Skyward Sword was okay to me. It didn't bother me that much, although I do prefer Zelda with just full controls. But the way that they implemented the motion controls was pretty innovative. Um, I hated Metroid Other M because of having to switch the Wiimote, like the transition in between playing it regular and focusing the Wiimote to point at the screen to use the missiles. That was pretty dumb. But Prime 3 was pretty good, So I think it's just a mixed bag of good games that implement it properly, and then like another bag of games that's like it just doesn't translate so well. So yeah, I don't agree with it never working well. That's my take on that.
I think the whole concept is stupid. Like I'm not. I think this is a hill I'm going to die on, and just say buttons works, and you shouldn't try to fix something that's not broken. I mean, yes, we know if they've done it throughout the years, and you know, various video game the three major ones, not three major ones, the only three ones, Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo have had their fair share of it. But I just it's a concept in a system that I'm not a fan of, and I really don't like it. I really didn't enjoy Skyward Sword. I would have enjoyed Skyward Sword more if I didn't have to raise my remote in the ear.
Yeah.
You know, I would have enjoyed No More Heroes more if it didn't look like I was whacking off, because that's how I have to charge my sword and shake the remote. I was like, and then on top of that, I was playing the last time I played Wiles. Um, I realized that when I dipped my hand to relax myself while shooting the bow gun would change. The bow gun would point downwards. I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, what is going on here? So I finished the quest and I went into training, and I realized that there's this gyro thing happening with the bow gun's reticle with the controller. I was so annoyed. I was so annoyed, because it's like my whole crew stopped playing Wilds at this moment. So I'm stuck with randoms online. And now this is why I feel like I wasn't like I would aim at something and not hit it, or like the character would sporadically change his direction. It's not that there's anything wrong with the controllers. It was something that I was doing. I hated it.
Hmm.
I hated it because the game doesn't explain to
Damn.
you that there's gyro on the
I
heavy
didn't even
bow
know that
gun.
was a thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, me neither.
there's gyro on it, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, why? like I don't like the tech.
My immersion, I get to like look like a fucking retard, like piloting my controller like a spaceship, so I can shoot the Raid Owl better or something. Other games have done that. Shooting games have done them. Like this is anybody who seriously plays like this is either trying to get some Guinness record that doesn't matter, or is a child, or is not the brightest bulb in the bunch. One of the three.
Like I'm not a fan of it. I'm sorry. I don't think the tech works for you. I think it translates into fun for about 20 minutes. And then after that, it becomes very dependent on whether you feel the need to play this game. But if you have options and you find yourself going to those other options, then you got to look at all variables of why you're not playing that particular game or console. And I just feel like the whole motion thing or gesture thing, unless you're playing Just Dance,
Ah, that's a good one. Yeah, okay, that's
yeah,
a good.
if you're playing Just Dance, then yeah, you need it. But other than that, to me, it's not something I want in my consoles.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I just think that it's not intended for every game. I think the problem is that when the technology came out, a lot of companies try to pigeonhole it into their games, you know, and it doesn't quite fit. Like, if you're playing a game as intense as Monster Hunter, I don't see why you would have gyro controls associated with the game. I understand where it's like, oh, but you're aiming and whatnot. That kind of sort of makes sense, but given as how intense, excuse me, Monster Hunter is, it's not a feasible mechanic to have in your game. I mean, it's not like there wasn't a time in like Skyward Sword where I had an intense moment where it's like, oh shit, I can't do anything or whatever. Um, and yeah, I felt that it at least my experience, it worked just fine. The whole the whole Travis touchdown thing, the whole no more hero things, yeah. If my mom walked in the room and saw me charging the sword, yeah, she'd probably think I'm doing something else. Um, and I can understand that too, because like you can become super exhausted just doing that motion, because the faster you shook, the faster the sword charged and whatnot. So I get that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I get that. But with games like, as you said, Just Dance, with those workout games, um, the whole what was it called, the Wii Sports Suite, they worked pretty fine, because they look like they put a lot more care, and it made a lot more sense for that mechanic to be in their games. Now, I guess where the Wii kind of like gimped themselves to some degree is that because their equipment was proprietary in that sense, a lot of developers was kind of forced to do that, even despite having the pro controller or whatever. Um, so they was like, yeah, we want to experiment with that. At least that's my guess. They want to experiment with the new controls and whatnot, and some instances they failed. But yeah, I mean, it's to each its own, you know. I'm pretty sure the
Last thing I'll
master them don't want it, but yeah.
yeah, no. Last thing I'll say is I hated that time back in early PlayStation 3 when the six-axis system kind of first was introduced in their controllers, and they did it with Uncharted. They did it with all of their first-party games. Every time you went over a log, I had to put the analog stick away, take my controller, and balance it on in midair so Drake can cross a log, or I'd fall. I'm like, this just breaks up the gameplay so harshly because you only do this when I'm crossing a log, and you put these sequences there on purpose, so I have to engage with them. You can tell it didn't work because in subsequent Uncharted games and subsequent action games, they either remove it completely or make it an option you can toggle on and off. So I think we know who won at the end of the day in that regard.
Yeah, with
I'll
that,
just leave it at that.
with that, I have no objections, because when I was streaming Hellblade, that shit annoyed the hell out of me. So I agree with you 100%. Like, I could not get her to walk over the damn log, and I was getting frustrated. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that would go back to my point. Like, there's just certain instances where those controls are not needed. I mean, hell, there is instances where it's not needed at all, but if you are going to implement it, make it make sense, you know. So, yeah.
All right, I think we're out of time, huh?
We got 5 minutes if you want to do another one.
Nah, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. I think we'll just close it out. I'll just
Okay.
end with I'm a button guy. I think we're all button guys.
Yeah.
I don't like
Oh.
touchscreen controls. I don't like motion controls. I don't like VR controls. I don't like camera controls. I don't like voice commands.
Hmm.
Just let me push buttons. I think buttons work. I think, like, if honestly, if there was an option to have like a cell phone, a modern cell phone with buttons, I would prefer that over a touchscreen, personally.
Hmm.
Um, but most phones just look like black rectangles now. So,
Yeah.
um, so anyway, that's just my opinion. But things like motion controls and like a different way to control something that's, I think, not practical at all. It's easy to advertise to people as like a new thing, and then people are susceptible to that. It's like, oh my god, like that's so new and different. Like new and different isn't always good or better, and
Exactly.
but some people just want to buy into whatever's new and different. So yeah, there's that. Anyways, that's our episode for this week. If you enjoyed our topics, let us know with a like, with a comment or dislike. If maybe you hated this format or you hated the topics we covered, let us know. In the comment section, let us know. Give us some suggestions. What are some topics we should cover in the future? Things you want to hear us talk about or discuss. The comment section is there for that. Subscribe for more content. We do episodes like this every single week. We publish every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Check the description down below for all of our social media links. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Discord, and TikTok. And definitely check out Mr. Esoteric on Twitch. He's on Logical Gamers TV on Twitch. He streams about 2 times a week, Mondays and Fridays usually, at like 10 p.m. Eastern. Typically, I think right now he's playing through. He's either finishing up or he's finished South of Midnight, and he was playing Assassin's Creed Shadows. He occasionally plays like multiplayer games with chat. Sometimes he'll play Fall Guys. Sometimes he'll play Splatoon or Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, things like this. So definitely check out his stream. I think it's worth it. Check out our other channel as well for all other Logical Gamers content. So this is the podcast channel. We have a normal, like a non-podcast channel where Esoteric does unboxing videos. He'll do opinion pieces, things like that, shorter form content if you're interested in that. And with that being said, we'll see you in next week's episode. If it ain't gaming, stay logical, right? That's the saying, right?
Oh, if it ain't gaming, it ain't logical. But you're
There you
almost
go.
there. You was almost
Stay
there.
logical. Yeah, the
Stay
remake.
logical. It is what it is. Fuck motion controls. Peace.
Later.